is easy as pie, and that's GDPR, not GBBO. So I only have 15 minutes, so I will be going quickly. This is what I plan to talk about. What is it? Why do I need to look after it? A bit about confidential computing, and of course open source and how that relates to it, and a little bit about the consortium itself. So I kind of have to apologize. I had far too much fun with this. There's lots of baking-related and cookie-related jokes, which are frankly unnecessary, but you're getting them anyway. So first of all, what is PII? It is personally identifiable information. Get a bunch of descriptions of what that might mean. But let's give an example. So I've got a picture up. I put this on my social media. It says birthday party today. But if I change that to my nephew Elon's birthday party, and I have to say that I'm not in any sense related to anyone called Elon, things might be a bit different if I were, then I may actually already have just given away actually a fair amount of information, right? We realize that Elon is 8 today. We have his name, possibly his full name or surname as well, depending on what type of nephew he is, his gender probably, and we might be able to get some other information as well from that. So this is potentially PII information. And it's a target for, leaks and breaches. Bad people want this information. There's a lot they can do with it. So there's someone already upset by the leaky egg thing. If you think this is bad, you'll just wait, okay? So why do I need to look after PII in the first place? Well, there's a whole ethical thing going on here, right? So this is a guy who was on the GBBO, on the Great British Bake Off. And yeah, okay, sorry, I live in ethics in Essex, so this is an obvious joke to be done. I do apologise. But there are regulations. Okay, that's the first thing. There's a growing number of regulations around PII that we really need to care about. And the most obvious one is the GDPR, and this is the European Union, a map of the European Union to which it applies, of course. But also, what is that? Who else could it apply to? Can anyone tell me what that is? It's a pound cake, so it refers to the UK. The UK also has GDPR regulations. But it's not just there at all. It applies in other jurisdictions. What type of food is that? It's an apple pie. So this refers to the US. Right, okay. But where else might you have these things? So Singaporean noodles. So it applies to Singapore as well. And last, a bit of a stretch. More importantly, it's China tea set, so it's clearly refers to China. So the point is that wherever you're doing business, I did tell you this is going to be bad, it doesn't get any better. You need to be worrying about this sort of stuff. So a little bit about confidential computing. So this is the definition from the Confidential Computing Consortium, which is set up in about in 2019. So it's the protection of data in use, so that's in RAM, by performing computation in an attested, hardware-based, trusted execution environment. So here are the important words. Firstly, it's data in use, so that's actually not just one that's in transit or in storage, it's actually in RAM. Hardware-based, so we're actually using silicon to do the protection. This is not software-based. And thirdly, attested, and what exactly that means we'll come back to in just a moment. But the idea here is basically you want to stop bad folks from getting into your workload, from looking at it. And there's 3 types of isolation in computing generally. There's workload from workload isolation, and VMs and containers and hypervisors know how to do that pretty well. There's host from workload isolations where you're trying to stop the workload breaking out. And again, VMs and containers do that pretty well. And there is this last type, which is workload from host isolation, which you cannot do with standard virtualization because hypervisors and containers require you to map memory pages in ways that don't allow it. What this allows you to do is provide protection, like an apron that that lady is wearing, against compromised machines, malicious kernels, CSP, sysadmins. Of course, we trust all our sysadmins, even our CSPs, in-house breaches and other stuff as well. And it does that. Exactly how that it happens depends somewhat on the technology. But you can basically think of encrypting memory pages and only decrypting them when they're on the CPU. And there's a bit of an issue, however, which is that these are available in AMD, Intel chips, RISC-V, NVIDIA. ARM is coming probably within the next few weeks, possibly in terms of hardware. But if I say, let's say Divya is my cloud provider, and I don't trust her entirely, fine. But I say, okay, please will you set up what's called a trusted execution environment using confidential computing? And she says, yeah, she's done it. It's great. That's fantastic. And I can now put my application in there, right? Well, I don't trust her, so how would I have trusted her to set it up, right? And so there's this concept called attestation, which is a set of protocols associated with each of the different technologies, which provides with cryptographic proof signed by the chip, which allows you to have assurances that what has been set up is what you think. So it's widely available. You can go to all of the major cloud vendors right now to use confidential computing. AWS has something which they call confidential computing, which is Nitro, which doesn't actually quite meet the definition by the CCC, but they do actually also have AMD's SEV SNP technology, which does, so you can use that. But OVH as well, and Google and Azure, it's widely available, or you can buy the chips yourself. So this is widely available out there. It's in CPUs, it's in GPUs, and there is good open source support coming out as well. So the next question is, we're an open source conference. Why open source? Well, why this picture? Because that is a source which is indeed open to the air. The best attribution ever, this is to the Commander US 7th Fleet takes attribution of that picture. I have no idea why, but that is apparently some sort of source. We care it's open source because this is your root of trust. This is the stuff you trust the most. This PII information absolutely needs to be protected properly. So you need stuff which is visible and which is auditable. And my view is that all security should be open source, so it could be visible and auditable. But particularly if you're using this as the base technology, you absolutely need that. And I would say, I've been saying for a number of years now, that if it's not open source, then you can have no technical assurances in the code, nor any basis to trust any system using it. And that's quite a big thing to say, right? But it's a big statement. But if you really care about what you're doing, you want the smallest TCB, the smallest trusted computing base you can possibly come up with. And having open source in there allows you to do that. Are you still going to need to trust the chips? Yes, but something has to actually run execution, execute instructions, and that's where it's going to be. We're going to shrink what we have to trust as small as possible. So very briefly, the CCC is part of the LF. We're a community focused on open source licensed projects, securing data in use, that phrase again, and accelerating the adoption of confidential computing through open collaboration. We have 13 open source projects. It might be 14 by the end of the week. We've got one going through. You'll notice there are not 13 logos. Sadly, not all of our projects have logos, but if you want to get involved and provide logos for them, it's open source and would love you to do that. Founded 4 years ago, I was at Red Hat when we founded it. I was one of the members there, and I've continued through there. And because it's Linux Foundation, anyone is welcome to our meetings, right? We'd love to see you if you want to discuss this stuff. Have a number of special interest groups. We do kernel work. We do attestation work. There's lots going on. So last slide, so that we've got a bit of time for some questions. This is me enjoying a cup of tea. I wrote a book about this stuff a while ago. I have a YouTube channel, all those sorts of things. And I'm also very involved with the EU CRA work of the Open SSF, which is kind of a side project. So that's it. That is your 11 out of your 15 minutes. Are there any questions? Oh, I thought I'd just done a perfect presentation and there were no questions. Okay, fire away.
This strikes me as something that would be used for DRM.
Oh, that was a concern early on in. It took a while to get into the kernel, Linux kernel, because there were concerns about that. Every technology can be misused, absolutely, but there are so many ways that you can use it for good as well. Yes, it turns out that it's not as useful for that as you'd expect, and mostly this is server-grade hardware where DRM is generally not particularly relevant. So yes, you can.
So do you think this is going to end up being used for DRM, as well as other things as
well?
Do you think it will be used for DRM in the future?
I don't know, is the answer to that. I'm sure people are using it for bad stuff, but they're also using it to allow people to collaborate across jurisdictions and NGOs to reduce modern slavery, and frankly, I'll take that. Yeah. So, yeah, it's because you can hide what's going on from the owner of a machine. But again, less of a problem, I think, in sort of server-grade use cases. Okay. Question, though? Anyone else? Excellent. So I think we have... Oh, one there. Okay.
Quick one. Are trusted execution environments much more expensive than the alternative?
They are available on chips which are standard server-grade chips at the moment. Is your CSP going to charge you more for using them? That is up to your CSP. But yes, they're generally going to charge you more for that. It's a return on investment question, right? Is the extra security that you gain going to help? Is there a performance hit? Yes, it's much smaller doing this stuff in hardware than it is using other techniques. Now, homomorphic encryption, we're talking 1 million times slower. CCC, you would hope to be low double digits performance hit, depending on what you're doing. I mean, can you write pathological cases? Yes, but on the whole, it shouldn't be too bad. So, yeah, it will probably cost you more. But all of the cloud providers are rolling it out. Microsoft are saying they're expecting sort of 5 to 8 years, everyone will be using it for everything, basically. It'll be a why not rather than a why, because it's kind of the obvious thing to be doing. There's an interesting question about density of workloads as well, which is that if you're doing standard virtualization, you can share memory pages which are read-only because you've got kernels and you can share those sorts of things. You can't really do that if they're all encrypted, right? So there are some interesting memory density and workload density questions as well. But anyone else? I think we probably have another. Oh, we have another thing coming. Okay.
Apologies if this was implied, but how does this play with things like FIPS?
Oh, that's a great question. So as far as I'm aware, there are no FIPS assured or accredited CCC confidential computing based solutions, but I also know that people have considered doing that and are looking to do it. It's basically a set of primitives with which you could use to help get you FIPS certification for certain things. Are we actually done this time? I'd also like to thank this gentleman here who's lent me his laptop because I couldn't boot mine up today, having rebuilt it overnight. So thank you, Fedora 41. I shall be trying again when I get home. Thank you.